ladies. Thank you everyone for joining. I am Sophie Bonnet, curator for ArtServe, and we are super excited about tonight's chat. We're here with the amazing group of women, artists, creatives behind Thou Art Women. We'll learn about their work, their artistry, and also about their latest exhibition, Misbehave, Lesbian, Folklore, and more. But first, I would like to welcome the mastermind behind Thou Art Women, attorney, LGBTQ advocate, writer, and great friend of ArtServe, Miss G. Rainier.
Yay! Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Thank you everyone who's joining us for this live chat. It's great to be here. We have with us half of the artists, some of the artists who were in our show in March, Misbehave. We're not live on Facebook yet, right?
Yes.
I think we are live on Facebook.
Oh, yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So I want to give everybody the chance to do an introduction of themselves. Hey, we got crew from Georgia too. So we have GiGi, Motley, Jessica, Concepcion, Niki, Lopez, and crew Maekdo. If you each would just quickly introduce yourselves to the audience.
Hi, I'm GiGi, a visual artist and performing artist. Been a visual artist most of my life, and through that unfolded the becoming a spoken word poetry artist and integrating it all together. I create videos of my work, and I've been with Thou Art. I think this is my third year, originally as performing, and now in two-dimensional work.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica?
I'm Jessica Concepcion. I'm a painter with a background in illustration, and illustration really ingrained in me to use imagery and symbolism in order to tell a story. So I paint the human figure and elements of nature and use them to explore themes that are universal, like, I don't know, childhood nostalgia, or more personal ones like the series that's included in this show. And that's a more personal look. They're also portraits, so it's a really deep look into my self-growth.
Great, thank you. Niki Lopez.
Niki Lopez, multidisciplinary artist, activist, cultural programmer, founder of What's Your Elephant, and also part of the Thou Art Women team. And I do quite a few things in the community and within the art space.
Thank you. Crew Maekdo.
What's good, y'all? My name is Maekdo. I am the founder of the Black Lesbian Archives. I'm also an astrologer. So if you ever need those reads, you know, Mars activations, North Node, South Node activations, let me know. And I'm also the CEO of Maekdo Productions too. So hit me up.
All right.
All right. Thank you, ladies. We will go around and show all of your work, part of the Misbehave exhibition. But first, G, for our friends watching that don't know you or Thou Art Women, please tell us a little bit about yourself and this great project.
Okay, great. So yeah, I am one of the co-founders of Thou Art Women. It was myself, Nick Harris, and PJ Hitchens, who back in 2014 founded Thou Art Woman, and we had the help of Niki Lopez. It actually started as an open mic night during her art exhibit here where we actually are in 1310 Gallery. And what happened is that for LGBTQ women, there's really very little spaces for us to gather and be ourselves. And we wanted to create a safe space for us to be authentic. So it started out as an open mic night during an art exhibit. And then we initially thought that we'd probably just have maybe like one, didn't know we'd continue. There was no plan or goal. And once we had that first one in 2014, our audience drove us to keep doing it. So we kept doing it here at the 1310 Gallery. It kept growing and growing. People like May Rain, who's performing later on, she's someone who was there from the very beginning. And then we moved to ArtServe in 2018 or 17. And then we had some really great shows there. And then we decided to create a weekend. So last year, 2019, was our first year doing an actual 3-day weekend using the art. So we would have a performance night, we have an art exhibit night, and then a brunch. And that was the first time we actually curated our own show. What we had done before is that we had popped up in other people's shows, and this time we said last year, let's actually curate our own show. Let's give the visual artists their opportunity to have their own space. And so we did that. And then 2020, this is our second year doing our own art exhibit. Unfortunately, COVID came around, we had to cancel, but fortunately we had hung up the show before. So we have the art exhibit in the ArtServe and also in the Fort Lauderdale City Hall since March. So that actually has played out pretty nicely for us. And this exhibit, we titled it Misbehave, Lesbian, Folklore, and More. And we pretty much we're piggybacking on the ArtServe show Disobedient.
Yeah, so like you just mentioned, Misbehave was supposed to display during the month of March at ArtServe alongside the Disobedient exhibition, but because of the current situation, we had to close our doors, and here we are. But we didn't want you to miss the opportunity to showcase some of the works in this show and get to meet some of the awesome artists that were part of it. So, G, what can you tell me a little bit about the concept and the inspiration behind the Misbehave exhibition?
Okay, well, first of all, we wanted to make sure that we had a show and theme that really a lot of LGBTQ women could connect to. So we wanted to make it pretty broad in terms of visual artists, whether they did video, sculpture, painting, photography. And like I said, we like the idea that you guys had with Disobedience, and we played on it with Misbehave, because in reality, all of us who are really being our authentic selves in some ways are just being disobedient or being misbehaving, and we're not caring about it. We're, contrary to what society wants from us. So we did a call for artists where we asked LGBTQ women, and we also include allies, people who connect to our community and support our community. So we did a call where we said that the exhibit aims to explore the ways lesbians have been represented in society, how those representations have been revered, reclaimed, rejected, and redefined. And we delve into the gender expression, gender presentation, lesbian sexuality, and how it's been used as a means of creating our own circles and our own acceptance. And with that call, we really got a broad breadth of work from about 13 artists. We have crew Maekdo, who's coming from Georgia. We have a team that's coming from Germany also, and then several people here from Fort Lauderdale, South Florida area. So a lot of people connected to the call. We really appreciated that.
Yes, awesome. I just want to say, everyone watching, please type in your questions and comments for the artists, and let's get to know our artists. Starting with GiGi. What do you guys think?
Hi.
All right. So GiGi, tell us a little bit about the works that we're exhibiting at the Misbehave exhibition. And in the meantime, I will share some of the images of your work.
Okay. So this one, Happy Hour, actually I took many years ago. It's a photograph in its original form, and it sort of looks like a painting. And I took this shot probably in the early 2000s with an old Nokia flip phone. Maybe some of you don't remember the flip phones, but they're ancient, and they actually could take pictures. And I didn't think I'd be able to blow it up, but I finally found a printer who could do that for me. And it's like on 2x3 feet on canvas. I have fun with abstract. I feel like when I watch people approach this piece, most of them don't see what that is until I give them some hints. So the wine glass, and then I'll ask them, who's holding the wine glass, and it's kind of like this, ooh, oh yeah, I see that now, So they have their own interpretation and their own story and interaction with it. So it's definitely my biggest conversation piece. I've shown this the most. It's my biggest seller. I have the most fun with it because it's digital. I feel like we have more options. I paint as well. That's the other piece we'll see. But this I have more fun with because of all the options, and it's sort of its abstract form that I feel like people have so much fun with. So that's Happy Hour. And the title, of course, was inspiration that came afterwards, sort of like a double happy hour, because the model She was waiting for her, impatiently waiting for her happy hour date. And so she thought she would maybe tease her by capturing the moment. So that's where that one came from. Yeah.
Awesome. G, what was it about Gigi's work that got your attention to be included in this exhibition?
Well, when I saw the work, I mean, we want a variety of work. We do want people who are expressing themselves in different ways. And we felt like this was a great expression of this one, especially when we saw My Pleasure. These are things we want to also think about, like as women, sometimes we haven't had the space to share this for ourselves. Oftentimes we have what's called like the male gaze, like sexualizing us in this way. So this is us being able to celebrate ourselves. And I both of these pieces I valued in that way, that this is us sharing our own, celebrating our own sexuality in our own space.
GiGi, and what is your medium of preference? Because I see that you had a photo, you were doing photography, and what medium is this piece right here?
So this one is acrylic paint. The other one, of course, was from a photograph, and which I colorized with. Back then it was Microsoft Paint. It wasn't even Photoshop. So this one is purely acrylic paint, and for me, it's a different experience. The painting for me is more personal. It's more involved, and whereas the digital work is kind of more playful. Again, that you have more options. You can make prints of it and change the color and change the texture and so forth. So in a way, I have more fun with the digital work, but with the painting. Definitely more hands-on, personal, maybe more emotional in the process of it. So just, fun in a different way. And that painting, much like this other one, it kind of, I feel, maybe you all can relate who paint, but you start the piece and then it speaks to you. So it started as one woman. I'm not sure I even knew there would be a second woman in that piece, and the first one kind of invited the second one, and then it became this sort of sensual, I feel a little bit of, powerful. And I kind of relate, I think, to both figures in this. So, and, the viewers too. So, yeah.
Thank you, GiGi.
Thank you.
And we will keep talking with GiGi. But first, let's check out Jessica's work. Hey, Jessica.
Hi, Sophie.
Where's Jessica? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you and your work.
The idea behind this series, it started with the name. I thought of the title of the series, Frida, You're Mine, which I love a play on words, and then it allowed me to play with the idea of trying to do self-portraits like Frida Kahlo. So her paintings, they're self-portraits, but it's not just capturing the image, they're loaded with symbology. And in doing the research about that, I read that her work was considered surreal. But when she was asked about it, and I'm paraphrasing, but when she was asked about it, she said, that's what people see, but I'm painting my reality. And when you look at them, I mean, there's so much emotion, and there's just so much there in these tiny little paintings. So I really wanted to try that. I wanted to explore that. The paintings that you're seeing here are kind of in the reverse order, but it doesn't matter. I can tell you a little bit about each painting, if that's cool. Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So the one on the left, it's a self-portrait with the conch shell. This one, the symbology is the most opaque, I think, because it comes from a personal experience. I went kayaking in the Florida Keys. And it was like a short kayak trip to an island out in the ocean. And when I got off the kayak, I found a conch shell, and I picked it up. And these like two little alien eyes, the eyes were at the end of their rods. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought about what lived in there. I just ate conch, or, it's delicious. But it just made like a huge impact that I saw this little alien staring back at me. So that was that's the reason why I mirrored that back, and you can only see my eyes in that painting. And it's just kind of reminding me that there's always a surprise, waiting for you if you just like take a minute to look and to experience it. So the middle one is it's a self-portrait with a blue-ringed octopus. This one, octopuses are so neat. They're so intelligent and creative, and I really wanted to include an octopus in one of these. This one happens to be the size of a golf ball. He's this big, and he can paralyze you in under a minute and kill you in under a minute if they get at you. And of course, it lives in Australia because that's where all little deadly things live. So when it gets threatened, like these little electric blue spots come out, and if you can't see it in the image, but if you look at it in person, you can see that the circles or the circles that normally light up blue are there, but they're just beneath the surface. So it's kind of like a superpower that I have, that maybe, you know, it's like wearing the S underneath the suit. That one's more about like hope and adaptability and kind of knowing that you have an inner strength that you don't always have to kind of show, that you know is there. And the last one is a self-portrait with a tufted titmouse. This one's the one that has the most story behind it. The tufted titmouse, its totem meaning is the keeper of wisdom, and in this portrait, it's sitting on my shoulder, but the shoulder is not even indicated. It's just it's kind of like I was going for a chalkboard look for the line drawings for the animals, and so he's there, but he's not looking at the viewer. I'm making direct eye contact with the viewer, and those feathers are kind of like dropping bits of that knowledge. So that one is it's about like knowing that truth and knowledge is there if you want it, and knowing how to accept it and look for it, and that's it.
Yeah, so I actually got to see these works before they were installed. I was going crazy in the middle of the disobedient installation, so I didn't get to see the Misbehave final show, final display. But I did see these 3 works, and I immediately felt attracted and intrigued by the narrative and dialogue. And G, like, what was it about Jessica's work that captivated you?
You know, I think just like when we started the open mic event, we felt like we really wanted to have more of our voices in. And with this, I feel it spoke to like our visibility. Maybe that's why some women, when you think of Frida, did the self-portraits that she did and what we have from Jessica, because it feels a great way for us to see ourselves. And then the way Jessica paints herself, her self-portraits are not like how anybody else would have captured it. And I think that speaks to our community in terms of like how we see ourselves is not necessarily how other people see us. And I like the way that she also did several different pieces with the different angles of her image.
Yes, thank you, G. I would like to ask Jennifer if we had any questions or comments from Facebook or Zoom.
I honestly thought that was a cardinal, Jessica, when I first saw that bird.
Oh yeah, there's color.
It looked just like a cardinal. It's a cardinal that flies around back and forth in front of the house. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, yeah.
We don't have any questions yet. We just have a lot of hearts and likes, a bunch of people on Zoom, a bunch of people on Facebook Live. Everyone's saying hi.
Hey, everybody.
Linda just said, love the one with the conch shell. Yeah,
Thank
everyone, and Cheryl just said, you are right, you have to define yourself.
Yes. Well, I want to encourage everybody in the audience to share this conversation with your audience. Feel free to ask questions. All of us are open books. You can ask any one of us pretty much anything you'd like, and we're happy to share with you.
Yes, thank you, Jessica, and everyone for your comments. And we have a special performance coming up. G, would you like to introduce our next artist?
Yeah, it will be my pleasure. As I said a little earlier, when Thou Art Woman started back in 2014, soon after, we were blessed with May Rain, who is an amazing spoken word artist and and poet in our community. She has her own poetry brand called Ink Therapy. She has a great following. We're going to talk a little bit, we'll allow her to share a little bit about her as an entrepreneur, but in terms of being a poet, she's one of the best. She's nationally recognized. She's performed across the country, and we're just happy to have her as a part of Thou Art Woman family. We feel really fortunate to have her. So Mary, I'd love to hear what you got to share with us today.
Hello, hello. I am happy to be a part of the Thou Art Woman family. I love when people are consistent with art. And that is one of the things that I love about what you do. It's that you are consistent. You know, oftentimes people don't see the value in it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get someone that is consistent and keeps going and you know, is passionate about their brand, I love it.
Thank you, yes.
So of course, you know, when I started Ink Therapy, everybody was saying, you know, why would you call it Ink Therapy? And you have to, like the previous artist said, you have to create your own identity within art, you know, and that's the thing that makes us all different and the thing that makes us all beautiful. So I'm going to read a piece from my first book, which is My Right to Live and Love. It's not a long piece. I'm going to read it and get out of your way. Not going to take time.
Hey.
And I am going to read it because it is not committed to memory.
That's fine.
Love you, May Rain. I love you guys so much too. All right. Experience makes the complex things simple. Her spirit is relentless yet gentle. I can tell that she grabbed life by the balls to steady herself. A front row student, at times she has studied herself. Her eyes admit that she can find perfection in my flaws. The firmness of her grip assures me it's safe to fall. The angels carry her good intention. And I can hear her thoughts transmitted when I'm not even paying attention. At just past 30, barely had my hands dirty. She knows I have the potential to be reckless. Spoiled and dangerous, but her inner child is courageous and love is contagious, and she ain't scared to sail the high tide. Water is raging still. I can feel her reservation. But what seems insane can also be your salvation. I am Friday nights. She is easy like Sunday mornings. We are as divergent as the time zones we were born in. This means her stories are never boring. Our lives to each other are foreign. We are exchange students, learning new culture. She has discovered in me a priceless sculpture. I am her archaeologist. She is the archivist of my soul. There's almost 20 years of history lost in our evolution. She is a realist. I am an idealist. She is the voice of reason. I am the illogical young warrior packing the weapon I promised to leave behind. She nurtures my naivete. I am the Sudoku puzzle reviving her mind. I am swift. She is one day at a time. I am liberty. She is liberal, dominantly youthful. She is dominant, beautiful. She makes me wonder. I make her remember. I'm spontaneous spring. She is consistent December. She is the depth of love making. I am a first kiss. The beauty of our journey is how we find ways to coexist like this.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Danielle said, OMG, wonderful, such a relatable poem.
Wow. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Everyone loved you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
That was great. So what do you think? We get to check out Niki's work?
Yes.
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 Oh, Niki.
Niki, tell us about a little bit about yourself, your work. I'm gonna share some slides with
myself and my work.
What are we seeing here?
So this is a series called The Feral Feminine. There's 10 different photographs within this series. It's actually a larger series that includes me and another queer artist named Niki. So we share a lot of similarities. So last year we did a collaboration called the Niki Art Show, and wanted to combine our work. So a lot of times when I do my art shows, or sometimes just in general, I paint my face in a different way, not the mascara and the traditional way people do makeup. And I have part of my work, I talk about mask, whether it's a concept or actual mask and layers and things like that. And so she's she does copper art. So in this series she made the crowns, and this is one of my pieces that I'm holding, my art pieces, which is called Healing from Within. So it connects to some of the works that I have that's dealing with me being a survivor of sexual abuse, and connected to the What's Your Elephant project, using the arts to talk about anything unspoken. So this series called The Feral Feminine, because it's like throwing out a lot of times women in art, or women in general, we're objectified. We have the male gaze, we have like how we're supposed to look, and so both of us consider ourselves this feral creature, just like going against the grain and taking out all the things that we're supposed to look like, and not considering anyone else's gaze but our own, and just that empowering and connecting to kind of some of that tribal and traditional elements from our from the past, and bringing that out into the future. So that was a collection that we did together.
Wow, Niki, I perceive a lot of investigation and thought process behind your work. I identify historical and cultural references in your work, symbology, universal concepts. How did you go from inception or idea to translation to final product? And as a multidisciplinary artist, how do you go about choosing the right medium?
So one of the things that's consistent with my work, or just me in general, I like to educate, I like to inform, I like to talk about those things that are not really talked about, whether I'm, hinting to it in my work. So sometimes I want to bring in some of those tribal aspects, paying homage to the Yoruba culture, something that I feel like that, as people of the diaspora, when we're brought over to this side of the world, a lot of our whole entire culture was stripped, and we were, given a certain, a God to follow, and things like that, to the point where most people don't know. Not only do they not know about that culture, but there's a negative connotation when you bring up Yoruba, Santeria, voodoo, all those things, and just wanted to use myself, my work to, have people say, what is that? Why do you do that? And so I'm really connected to symbolism. I'm very tactile. I like to, even though years ago, I used to do a lot of photographs, and then I did painting, but I've always wanted to do some more with my hands. So doing like the multimedia sculptures and paper mache, and just putting my all into whatever that is, and just feeling the different mediums is something that I enjoy, and I kind of get lost in that process. This particular sculpture that's in the piece, so this is like me, it's kind of close to my heart, and it's just me like protecting it, but kind of sharing it a little bit, being a little vulnerable, but holding it. So I have the What's Your Elephant project. I have pieces that I call, I am the elephant. Like, I'm the one that has to bring this up. So all of the pieces before this one was specifically about trauma and abuse. And so this one in particular, where it's called Healing from Within, is coming from that concept. It's like, I think it's a Japanese art, it's tensigu, where, they take where if the china is broken, they put it back together with gold. And so that whole thing where it's just like you're broken, but you're still powerful, and you're still strong, and still beautiful. So that's why this piece in particular was not just talking about the past and the trauma, but that I'm healing. So that was an expression of that.
Wow. Thank you, Niki. I think, most of the time, the true work of art is the documentation of the art making process, even sometimes even more than the final product. How important is to document your own process, or if documentation it plays any role in your practice at all? And if it does, what type of documentation do you do?
Yeah, I really get into the process of the work. I like to get to this, for me, especially, I've always been into art since I was little, but because of some of my past, I didn't have that traditional track that most children go through when their parents identify them as a creative. So even though I've been exposed and I expose myself to different things, I'm still somewhat of considered what in some regards an outside artist, where I'm self-taught, and it's just I learn by doing and experimenting. So sometimes when I'm working on pieces, it takes a lot emotionally and mentally for me to even start the piece, because I go through this whole thing. Am I an artist? What am I doing? Imposter syndrome, whatever have you. So I have to do a lot just to get out of my own head before I even start it. And then once I start it, it's just like I get into this zone. And sometimes I, do work by music, and it can, influence my work, because, somehow when I'm working on it, it's kind of intuitive. I do a lot of documentation in terms of, like, I'll do, what do you call it? Time-lapse videos and different things like that. Sometimes I may go live during some of the works, but I do take pictures. I don't always put it out there, but I do like to collect it from time to time, or sometime I'll just put up a camera somewhere and then I'll do the work. So I do like the process, and to me, it's cathartic. It's also emotional. It's also healing. It's also being brave and wanting to share.
Wow. Yes. Thank you, Niki. Are you guys ready for the next piece?
Everybody, please brace yourselves.
All right.
It's a powerful.
So Niki, this is for her eyes only. So what are we looking at? What is this medium?
So this is mixed media. It's a mixed media sculpture. I started out using the bandage strips, and I casted a model to be as the starting point, and then I built around it to make it to be a sculpture to stand alone. So this is also, talking, I think G and a couple of people were talking about a little earlier about, owning our spaces. And, so for her eyes only, a lot of times, even sometimes when lesbians are portrayed, it's still under a male gaze, or what's acceptable for lesbian, if it fits a heterosexual norm, or if it fits, like if it's two feminine women, it's acceptable, it's palatable. So, this, some, lesbian women, some women within the LGBT space use a strap-on. So, I also like to provoke, and usually this was particularly challenging because I don't usually have this type of work that I display. I do have other artworks that I do that I've never shown. And sometimes I wonder, like, oh, should I put it under another name? And so it was also like owning that space of, this is my art and I want to put it out there. But having something where I don't care if it's palatable to other people. This is us, for her eyes only. She's holding, she has her nice strap on, and she's just boldly holding it, and it's being, idolized as something that's what some women, that's what some people identify with, and there's not a problem with that. And some, even within the LGBT space, there's some people who like, oh, if you use a strap on, you're not really a lesbian, and this is like, and it's just like, throw all of those things out and just, be in whatever space that you identify with.
Yes, no, 100%. And it's always challenging when artists produce, that type of provocative work. It's always challenging to find spaces to exhibit that type of work.
Yes.
So I think that's why, G, what you're doing is so special and powerful. And, we couldn't be happier to have you guys on the space representing.
I just want to comment on that piece. I mean, I remember when Niki actually said she wanted to make it as the show was approaching. And it was it was actually amazing to see as it came into fruition. And then it was very important that she actually showed that it was a strap on because you can see like the harness or the underwear there. And it's kind of, especially as a masculine presenting woman, to feel like, you know, like masculinity is not owned by men. Sometimes people feel like, oh, you're trying to be a man, or you're masculinity for the ownership of men, but it's really like masculinity and femininity is for all of us. So I'm impressed with like the thought of doing it, and that she actually brought it to fruition and she made it for the show.
Also, this piece was made especially for me.
Nice.
It was, I misbehaved, come on, she's misbehaving, right? So
That's it.
It was literally like just probably days before that she was like finishing it up. So yeah.
Wow.
You know, sometimes the inspiration comes at different times. So if I'm inspired, you know, it doesn't matter if there's a deadline, I'm just going to jump into it and do it. Like I'll take a long time. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Like, okay, I see the time clock going by. So.
Well, thank you so much, Niki. It's always great to
hear
Niki. Artists talk.
Yeah.
I always learn so much. And I want to ask Jennifer if we have questions for Niki or GiGi or Jessica, or comments.
We do. Really strong, good reaction from both Zoom and Facebook about the piece that you just showed. Said, Niki, you are amazing. I think she means I live this, not I love this. I live this.
Maybe she lives it too.
And she loves it. It is provocative. And I asked everyone on Facebook what they thought. Jill Lefkowitz says, this is amazing. Anna Lucia, it's perfect. Adia, oh, you know who that is, right? This is beautiful.
We're family and family.
Yes. Raquel, I truly appreciate the work of Niki Lopez. So there's a big outpouring of love out there for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A question that's really for any artist that wants to answer. It is from Deanna. And Deanna says, how did each artist become an artist? It's a vulnerable thing to be. How do you feel about showing that vulnerable side to the public?
That's a good question.
So if anyone wants to take that, go ahead. How about you, Niki, since you're right there?
Go, Niki.
Oh, man. I actually posted out on Facebook like, oh, I'm feeling a little bashful for the new work that, you know, but it's something that I wanted to do and show, and, you know, and also show different sides of me, because I do have that part of me that identifies with androgyny and plays around with the different genders. And but I think I've always been a creative. So, but, you know, I think it always comes up. Do I feel I'm an artist? What does an artist mean? Do I feel, you know, so sometimes there are days where I feel like, oh, I got it. This is what I do. That's what and there's other days I have to remind myself, like I curate art shows, and it's like some of my anxiety every year. I've been doing a show here, and I had to work to say, you know what, people come to the show, it's relevant, it's fine. But every year I would be like, what if I'm just making this, you know, what if I'm making it more than it is, and feeling, you know, like maybe last year was a fluke that people came and no one cares. So, and I have anxiety. So, so it's for me, it's a battle of acceptance and owning it and being fearful of it and just wanting to express it because it has to come out.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering that. We actually have a question directly for you. You mentioned, okay, hi, Niki, this is from Tracy. You mentioned getting out of your own head. What advice would you give to other potential artists to get beyond that fear of putting themselves out there?
It varies, but I like music. Sometimes I have this whole thing where I have to set up a vibe and have some music and have some incense and have a whole thing. So, so like even when I'm doing art, I can't think like, oh, this is going to take me a couple of hours, because I need like an hour or two sometimes just to get myself in the mindset. And I think over time, and you know, just even outside of just my art practice, personally, I've been going through counseling because of some things in my past, and just accepting like, okay, that voice in your head, it's going to be there anyway. So sometimes I push myself to work through it, you know, because that's also part of our survival mechanism from like when we're, you know, in the Stone Age and have to, you know, survive, but we don't need it as much, but it's still there. So I think over time, I've become to accept it and to say, okay, I hear that, I'm still wanting to do this, but you know, there's other things, you know, sometimes I have distractions, like I could do work with, and people are here, and you know, and there's other things going on, so I'm distracted from, you know, the chaos and the noise in my own mind, and that helps me to kind of focus on what I need to do.
I want to make sure we get the chance to get crew to share. And I'd love if GiGi and Jessica could also answer the question earlier about how they became an artist, but maybe if we could have crew share and then go back. And GiGi.
Yes, crew with Black Lesbian Archives, who has been patiently waiting for her turn. Crew, I see you. Okay.
Hey. What's up, y'all?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and your amazing project.
Yeah, so the Black Lesbian Archives, yo, we about to be hitting our third year? Yeah, June 25th, 2017. So we about to be 3 years in this thing, you know what I'm saying? So congratulations to the Black Lesbian Archives.
So what exactly is the Black Lesbian Archives?
Yes, so the Black Lesbian Archives started shortly after I had a spiritual awakening, and it kind of streamlined into a whole bunch of other things. I went from Atlanta to Williamsburg, Virginia, and I had a lot of time to think about all the things that had happened up until that point. I really started coming into myself fully as a lesbian and what that was and what that meant to me. And I ended up seeing this documentary. I wrote it down because I always be like, it's a documentary, but I can't remember it. But it's called Searching for the Last Lesbian Bars in America. And it's Vice did it, and you can actually find it through YouTube. And after I watched that documentary, I was just like, yo, like, and if you could see that little clip on the bottom too, that's kind of like the clip of what I seen, the full spectrum of it. But I was like, damn, if we don't have these spaces to, you know, come to and connect and see each other and be with each other, and they're dwindling, what do we have? You know, and I knew, you know, social media is great. You know, the internet and things like that is great. It's a good way for us to be able to connect like we're doing right now, like this. But there's just something so intimate about being able to really be able to connect with somebody face to face and talk to them about like their story and all the things that they've done in their life and things like that. So from there, I started the Instagram, Facebook, website. That same day, I just shot everything up. I started doing research. I'm like going in, I'm like, where are we at? You know, trying to find, you know, resources and different things. And I started to realize that a lot of the information that I was starting to find on the internet was either, I could start seeing that stuff was being either deleted or dwindled, or I couldn't really find the stuff that I was searching for. And the lesbian series that I was watching wasn't enough. And, you know, the documentary was enough. So I needed more context. So shortly after being in Williamsburg, Virginia, and getting that time to really, you know, think and be amidst of that water that I was around, I moved to Chicago, and I met Tracy Bain, she actually was one of the co-founders of Whitney City Times, which is a LGBTQ newspaper that, you know, got circulated around Chicago and beyond. And I connected with her, and I was doing my research in Chicago, and I was asking her, I'm like, I found you, like, I'm trying to figure out like where the Black lesbians at. And she was like, basically like, is this a threat? What's going on? I'm like, no, it's not a threat. It's not a threat. I really want to know. I'm really interested in knowing like the history about Black lesbians and where we come from and where we've been. Because I knew that we were a lot of women, lesbians, Black lesbians were people who had been on the forefront of a lot of these movements, but I wasn't seeing like the actual, you know, archives, like where I need more. So Tracy was like, you should come to this exhibit. It's called Lost and Found. It was like the dyke spaces of the, I say 60s, 70s, and 80s, but I actually looked it back up. I'm like, oh, 70s and 80s, but really 60s. And so when I went to that and I was like, oh yeah, I'm already going. I'll see you there. Pulled up, Tracy was there and met her, got to be at the exhibit, beautiful exhibit. Great experience. I just really wanted to see more of Black lesbians and what they have done in the Chicago area. So I talked to Tracy about it. You know, I got inspired by that. I told her, I said, you know, I would love to do an exhibit. She told me to go talk to Imani at Affinity. I met Imani and immediately we clicked, and that was that.
Wow.
So from then on, we had the exhibit that next year. We had the exhibit in June. We just celebrated a 2-year anniversary on the 14th. So shout out to that. Had an exhibit at Affinity for a month. We had Yvonne Welbin. You know, she's a filmmaker, dope filmmaker, a screenwriter. And she did her opening of African-American, Sisters in the Life, African-American media, lesbian media making. So she had her book released there. I also had like a BLA confessional room set up so you could like talk about your story. I had a list of questions in just in case you got stuck and you wanted to ask. And then on the other side of it, I had like the ChicagoGayHistory.org playing, and it was kind of like a movie theater setting or like a media room setting where you can like go in there and actually listen to the stories of these women who have been in the Chicago area. So that was going on. We had a month-long session, you know what I'm saying? It was open with that. We had a mixer, we had a film screenings, Cookie Hughes, Casey. Shout out to Casey. I was just talking to Casey. I don't know if you're watching this, but what up, Casey? Did that, ended up doing a panel discussion. So we had one of the co-founders, Chris Smith, we had Pat McCombs, we had Anna, did that, beautiful. And then we wrapped it up with a archiving 101 section, which Sabrina did from the University of Chicago. So talking about what is archiving, you know what I mean? Like the tools that we use, the gloves, certain type of gloves that you put on to make sure that you don't get, you know, chicken grease on them. You know what I mean? We did, you know, just different forms and different ways that we are preserving media. So I didn't plan for it all to come out that way, but I'm telling you, when you get that call, and the universe and your ancestors and everybody who's been there before you is tapping on you like, baby, it's time to go. It's just time to go. You know what I mean? It's time to do it. So, did that. Then it spurred into some other stuff. We did opening reception with Gerber Hart Library and Archives. Dope. Shout out to Will and everybody at the team. We did a, what else did we do? We did some more touring around Chicago. Some more touring in other places, and then we did a 9-day tour stop last year in Philly, DC, and New York, and visited some places and did some stops in different LGBT centers and Lesbian Her Story archives and all these different places. So, that is the Black Lesbian Archive. And right now, I'm in the process of expanding the Black Lesbian Archive. So I will be. I did announce a public BLA forum, but I'm going to push that back because it is the Cancer new moon, and the way the climate is now, we're just going to wait. But I will definitely have positions and things open for people to be able to, if they want to be a part of it. I'm looking for like a BLA council. You know, I'm looking for people like committee chairs, committee heads, street team, volunteers and stuff for people. And also off top of that, I'm looking for 3 other people that actually want to be on the tour, you know, like, because then that gets me to my other thing, which I'm almost done. Just let me spew. What gets me to my other thing of my short-term goal, since we're kind of redefining the scope with the tour, taking a bus and making it a mobile history museum. So wrapping out the entire bus, you know what I'm saying, plastering art copies all right, copies of the archives all over the bus, creating like DIY projects of like the certain tools, not the actual tools, but like paper mache or like different tools you use to archive, and also storytelling. We talk about going into these places and people telling our stories for us, and how we're bridging these generational cycles between our worlds, our communities, and things like that. But we're also talking about who is sharing the story and how are we telling the story so it can get passed down to the next generation on, and how are we learning about our history while we're still here, so we know the movements and the people who have been in this doing that work, so we can communicate how we're communicating right now. Because back in the day, if we want to talk about race, a lot of us is very separate, and it's still going on now. So how are we being able to use these movements? How are we being able to preserve this history? What does accessibility look like? That's another thing, because the internet is vastly changing, as we can see. So that's just the scope. I could talk to y'all all day about this, but I don't want to take up too much time. But that is the Black Lesbian Archives, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And we in this thing, we ain't going nowhere. We here.
So what type of archives are in the Black Lesbians archives, and how are these accessible, and how can the community contribute to the growth of this project?
Yeah, so I really had to sit, and I've been sitting for a long time, because even people have been asking me like, well, how can I submit these archives? And at first I was just like, submit, but not really looking deeply into the process of how these archives are being preserved. So at this point in time, I'm in between. I'm like, we can do digital archives where we're preserving and things like that, but we can also do physical. I prefer physical, but I will tell you why. This age of Aquarius, Saturn Aquarius energy that we're in, which rules technology and restrictions, Saturn on technology, and how we're accessing. I saw this documentary about I think it was like What the Fuck Internet or something like that. It was on Hulu, and it talked about the control that a lot of these I'm not gonna name nobody right now, but if you want to have a conversation with me, let's talk after this. But there's a lot of controls, and there's a lot of if we're talking about accessibility, there's a lot of people who do not have access to the internet. And if they do have access to the internet, there are different countries that actually have to pay for some of the stuff that we have for free. So talking about how we don't know if the internet is always going to be available to us as we think. And I think we're starting to see themes of that now, even though this has kind of been single-handedly going on behind our noses. And I will get into that in a whole, follow Black Lesbian Archives on YouTube. I'm going to have a whole webinar on this information, because my wig has been getting blown back about all this information that I'm coming up on. So really about, and just being sacred with our information. At first I was like, well, why aren't we here? Why aren't we there? And this and this and this and that. And people having access to it, yes. But also there's something so sacred about being able to actually come to the place that I'm at, or I'm coming to the place that you're at and sharing this. We live in a scroll, short attention span, era right now. We do. You see it all the time. People just scrolling. So information is not necessarily sticking. It's easy to get, on one topic and then hop off that train. You know what I'm saying? So how can I get people to actually come, or I can come to you, grassroots? How can I come to you and distribute this information, and you be able to come and sit with the archives? That's why I wanted to do this mobile history museum too, so you can actually come and sit with it. You can read it, you can learn about it, versus just some quick information I'm throwing up because it looks good on Instagram or social media. You know what I mean? So I'm really, psychologically speaking, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to get into your mind, baby. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get into your mind so you can keep this information, and this information can't, because once it's in your mind, that information can't go nowhere. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to get to the bottom of how we're accessing that information. And I know y'all is taking me a minute because I want to make sure before I put it out there that it sticks. You know what I mean? Anything that I put or post on social media, trust and believe I have thought about it before I have posted it, baby. I have thought about it because you're taking in what I'm dishing out. You feel what I'm saying? You're eating that plate. So I want to make sure whatever I'm serving you to the table, it's A1 quality, you know? So